At 3:17 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday in Riverside County, California, Marcus Chen's front door exploded inward with a thunderous crash. A man in tactical gear stood silhouetted against the porch light, screaming about HOA violations while his wife Sarah instinctively reached for something under their nightstand. That wasn't a phone. Marcus Chen had always believed in the American dream. The 34-year-old software engineer had worked 16-hour days for 3 years to afford the modest 2-story home in the planned community of Willowbrook Estates, with its manicured lawns, uniform mailboxes, and strict homeowners association guidelines. It seemed like the perfect place to start a family with his wife Sarah. Sarah Chen appeared to be everything Marcus had hoped for in a partner. The 31-year-old woman with striking green eyes and an easy laugh worked as a communications consultant for various government contractors. She traveled frequently, sometimes disappearing for weeks at a time, but Marcus never questioned it. Her work paid well, and she always returned with stories about boring corporate training seminars and compliance meetings. The couple had been living peacefully in Willowbrook Estates for 8 months when the first HOA notice arrived. It was a crisp white envelope with the community's official seal, delivered by certified mail on a Monday morning in September. The violation notice cited unauthorized exterior modifications and threatened a $500 fine. Marcus stared at the document in confusion. The supposed violation involved solar panels on their roof, but they had received written approval from the HOA board 6 months earlier. He had the paperwork filed in their home office, along with architectural review committee signatures and engineering specifications. This has to be a mistake, Marcus told Sarah the evening as she unpacked from another business trip. We followed every single rule. I have all the documentation. Sarah's expression shifted almost imperceptibly as she read the notice. For just a moment, her casual demeanor seemed to harden, revealing something calculating beneath the surface. Then she smiled and handed the paper back to him. HOAs can be difficult, she said. Maybe we should just pay the fine and move on. But Marcus couldn't let it go. The following week, he attended the monthly HOA board meeting in the community center's sterile conference room. 5 board members sat behind a folding table, led by a stern-faced man named Robert Kellerman, who served as president. Kellerman was in his mid-50s, with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. He listened to Marcus's complaint with barely concealed irritation, occasionally shuffling through a stack of papers. Mr. Chen, Kellerman said finally, our records show no approval for solar panel installation at your address. The Architectural Review Committee has no record of your application. Marcus felt heat rising in his chest. That's impossible. I spoke with committee chairwoman Mrs. Rodriguez personally. She signed the approval form. Mrs. Rodriguez moved to Arizona 3 months ago. Another board member interjected. She's no longer with the committee. The meeting ended with Kellerman's cold dismissal and a warning that further violations would result in escalating fines. As Marcus walked to his car, he noticed Kellerman speaking quietly with a younger man in the parking lot. The stranger wore dark clothing and seemed to be taking notes. Over the following months, the violations multiplied. The Chens received notices for everything from trash can placement to lawn height, each carrying increasingly steep penalties. Marcus documented every interaction, took photographs, and maintained meticulous records. The fines totaled over $8,000. By December, Sarah's behavior grew stranger during this period. She spent more time on encrypted phone calls, speaking in languages Marcus didn't recognize. Sometimes he would wake in the middle of the night to find her gone, returning before dawn with no explanation. When he asked about her frequent absences, she claimed work was demanding and suggested he focus on resolving the whole situation. The breaking point came on December 15th. Marcus received a certified letter stating that the whore intended to place a lien on their property and potentially force a sale to recover unpaid fines. The letter was signed by Robert Kellerman and notarized by someone named David Walsh. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in his home office until 2 a.m., reviewing every document and searching for legal precedents online. The house was completely silent except for the hum of his computer and Sarah's steady breathing from their bedroom upstairs. At exactly 3:17 a.m., their front door exploded inward. The crash was deafening, followed immediately by shouting. Marcus stumbled from his office to see a figure in tactical gear and a badge standing in their destroyed doorway. The man was medium height with close-cropped hair, pointing a flashlight beam directly at Marcus's face. Robert Kellerman, HOA enforcement officer, the man shouted. You're in violation of community standards and have failed to comply with lawful orders. Marcus's mind reeled. HOA enforcement officers didn't exist. They certainly didn't conduct armed raids at 3 a.m. He raised his hands, squinting against the bright light. There's been a mistake, Marcus said. You can't just break into someone's home. Shut up, Kellerman barked. Where's your wife? That's when Marcus heard Sarah's voice from the top of the stairs. Calm and deadly serious. Identify yourself and state your authority for this entry. Her tone was completely different from the woman Marcus had married. There was no fear, no confusion, only cold professional assessment. In the dim light, he could see she was holding something in her right hand. Kellerman's flashlight beam swung toward the staircase. Sarah Chen, you're coming with me. There are people who want to talk to you. Sarah descended 3 steps, moving with fluid precision Marcus had never noticed before. You've made a serious error in judgment, she said quietly. Have I? Kellerman laughed harshly. We know who you really are. Agent Chen, we know about Prague, about the Petrov operation, about everything you've been hiding from your husband. Marcus felt the world tilt beneath his feet. Agent Chen, Prague. What was happening to his life? Sarah reached the bottom of the stairs, and in the chaotic beam of Kellerman's flashlight, Marcus saw his wife clearly for perhaps the first time. She moved like a predator, balanced and ready. Her green eyes reflected the light with an intensity that made his blood run cold. Marcus, she said without taking her gaze off Kellerman. Call 911 and tell them there's an armed intruder in our home. Don't move, Kellerman commanded. But his voice had lost its earlier confidence. That's when the real Robert Kellerman walked through their shattered front door, hands zip-tied behind his back and a strip of duct tape across his mouth. Behind him stood 2 more men in dark clothing, pushing the genuine HOA president forward like a human shield. Marcus stared in complete shock as he realized the man who had been terrorizing them for months was an imposter. The real Kellerman's eyes were wide with terror above the tape, and he was trying desperately to communicate something. Surprised, the fake Kellerman asked, "Your wife has been very difficult to locate, Mr. Chen. She's quite good at disappearing, but everyone has weaknesses, and apparently hers is you." Sarah's laugh was soft and utterly without humor. "You have no idea what you've just walked into." The fake Kellerman raised what Marcus now realized was a weapon, not a flashlight. "Actually, I think I do. You're a deep cover CI operative, and you're coming with us. Your husband can watch, or he can die, your choice." Sarah looked at Marcus with an expression of profound sadness and love. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted you to see this part of my world." Then she moved. The next 30 seconds shattered everything Marcus thought he knew about reality. Sarah moved like liquid lightning, diving left as the fake Kellerman's first shot splintered the stair railing where she had been standing. She rolled behind their leather couch, and Marcus heard a sound he had never heard before in their home, the distinctive metallic slide of a weapon being prepared for action. "Federal agent." Sarah's voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. "Drop your weapons and get on the ground." The two men holding the real Kellerman exchanged glances of shock and panic. They had clearly expected to surprise the suburban housewife, not engage a trained operative on her home territory. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, his mind struggling to process what was happening. His wife, the woman who made pancakes on Sunday mornings and cried during romantic comedies, was exchanging gunfire with armed intruders in their living room. "Marcus, stay down," Sarah commanded. "Crawl to the kitchen and hit the panic button under the microwave." Panic button. Marcus had lived in this house for 8 months and never knew there was a panic button anywhere. But he crawled across the hardwood floor as bullets shattered picture frames and punched holes in the drywall above his head. His hands shook as he felt under the microwave until he found a small, hidden switch. When he pressed it, nothing seemed to happen. But Sarah's voice carried a note of relief. "Help is coming," she called out. "Surrender now, and this doesn't have to get worse." The fake Kellerman laughed bitterly. "You think your CIA friends can help you? We know about the leak in your organization. We know about Operation Nightfall. Your own people sold you out." Marcus watched in horrified fascination as Sarah processed this information. Her entire body language shifted, becoming even more focused and dangerous. "Interesting," she said. "Then you know I have nothing left to lose." What happened next would haunt Marcus for the rest of his life. Sarah emerged from behind the couch like an avenging angel, moving with impossible speed and precision. The first intruder went down before he could raise his weapon. The second managed one wild shot before Sarah's return fire dropped him beside his partner. The fake Kellerman had the real HOA president pressed against his chest as a human shield, his weapon pointed at the terrified man's head. "Back off," he screamed. "I'll kill him." Sarah stood perfectly still, her weapon trained on the imposter with unwavering accuracy. "Let him go, Victor." Marcus noticed she had used a name This wasn't random violence. Sarah knew who this man was. So you do remember me. The fake Kellerman smiled. Prague was such a lovely city. Shame about what happened to your partner. Something flickered across Sarah's face. Pain, rage, or both? David knew the risks. David trusted you, Victor spat. Just like your husband trusts you. Just like everyone trusts you until you get them killed. Marcus saw his wife's hands tremble almost imperceptibly. Whatever had happened in Prague, it was a wound that hadn't healed. Marcus, Sarah said quietly, go upstairs. Lock yourself in the bathroom and don't come out until I call for you. I'm not leaving you, Marcus said, surprising himself with his own conviction. This isn't your world, Sarah replied, never taking her eyes off Victor. These aren't your sins to pay for. But Marcus stayed where he was, crouched behind the kitchen island, watching the woman he married face down, a ghost from her past. The standoff lasted another tense minute before the sound of sirens began wailing in the distance. Victor's expression shifted from confident to desperate. Your backup isn't coming fast enough, he said. I can kill this man and disappear before they get here. You could, Sarah agreed. But then you never find out what really happened to the Petrov files. Victor's eyes widened slightly. You destroyed them. Did I? Sarah's smile was cold as winter. Or did I hide them somewhere your employers would never think to look? The real Kellerman whimpered behind his tape as Victor pressed the gun harder against his temple, clearly struggling with indecision. The files are gone, Victor insisted. Prague Station confirmed it. Prague Station was compromised, Sarah said, just like tonight was compromised. How else would you have found me? Marcus watched this deadly chess match play out in his living room, beginning to understand that his wife's work was far more dangerous and complex than he had ever imagined. The sirens were getting closer, but Victor seemed to be reaching a decision. His grip on the weapon tightened, and Marcus could see murder in his eyes. That's when the lights went out. The house plunged into complete darkness, and Marcus heard the distinctive whisper of suppressed gunfire. Someone was screaming, but he couldn't tell who. Glass was breaking, furniture was crashing, and through it all came the sounds of a violent struggle. When emergency lighting from outside finally illuminated the scene 30 seconds later, Victor lay motionless on the living room floor. The real Robert Kellerman sat against the wall, alive but in shock, the tape torn from his mouth. Sarah stood in the center of the destruction, weapon lowered, breathing heavily. But she wasn't looking at the carnage around them. She was staring at the front door, where 3 figures in tactical gear had silently entered their home. They wore no identifying marks, carried military-grade weapons, and moved with the coordination of a professional team. The lead figure removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face Marcus didn't recognize. Agent Chen, the man said formally, you need to come with us. Sarah's weapon came up again, but more slowly this time. She looked exhausted, like a fighter who had won the battle and knew the war was far from over. Let me guess, she said warily. There's been a development. The Prague files have been accessed. The man replied, your cover is blown, your handler is dead, and there's a kill order out on both of you. Marcus felt his legs give out as the full implications hit him. Both of you. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was a target. Sarah looked at him with profound sadness. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I never wanted this life to touch you. The team leader checked his watch. We have maybe 10 minutes before hostile teams arrive. You both need to disappear. Permanently. Sarah shook her head. Not both of us. Marcus is innocent. He has nothing to do with this. He's married to you. The man replied grimly. In this business. That's enough. Marcus found his voice. What are you talking about? What files? What happened in Prague? Sarah looked at him with tears in her eyes. I can't tell you. The less you know, the safer you'll be. Safer. Marcus laughed hysterically. There are dead people in our living room and you're telling me about kill orders? How much less safe could I possibly be? Before Sarah could answer, the team leader's radio crackled with urgent chatter in what sounded like Russian. Time's up, he announced. We're leaving now, or we're all dead in 5 minutes. Sarah made her choice. 6 months later, Marcus Chen sat in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., wondering how his quiet suburban life had led to testifying before a closed Congressional Intelligence Committee. The room was sterile and intimidating, with no windows, and security that rivaled the Pentagon. Committee members sat behind a curved desk like judges, their faces grave as they reviewed classified documents that would determine not only Sarah's fate, but potentially Marcus's as well. Sarah sat at the witness table in a simple gray suit, looking nothing like the deadly operative who had saved their lives that December night. Her hands were folded calmly in her lap, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. Committee Chairman Senator Roberts leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Agent Chen, you stand accused of compromising Operation Nightfall, resulting in the deaths of 3 intelligence assets and the exposure of American operatives across Eastern Europe. Sarah's voice was steady. I dispute those charges, Senator. The evidence suggests otherwise. Roberts continued. Intercepted communications show that you had unauthorized contact with Russian intelligence officer Viktor Petrov in Prague 3 days before the operation was compromised. Marcus felt his heart sink. This was the first time he had heard the full scope of what Sarah was accused of: treason, selling out her own people. Sarah's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Helen Martinez, stood up. Senator, my client was operating under direct orders from her handler, Deputy Director James Morrison. Agent Chen was attempting to turn Viktor Petrov as a double agent. Deputy Director Morrison is dead. Another committee member interjected. Conveniently, he can't corroborate that story. Sarah's composure cracked slightly. Jim Morrison was murdered to prevent him from testifying about the real source of the Prague leak. Senator Roberts shuffled through classified documents. Agent Chen, we have telephone intercepts of you discussing operational details with someone identified as Asset Romeo. Can you explain these conversations? For the first time since the hearing began, Sarah looked directly at Marcus. Her green eyes held a mixture of love and desperate regret. Asset Romeo was my husband, she said quietly. The room erupted in murmurs as committee members exchanged shocked glances. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face as he realized what Sarah was saying. You compromised operational security by discussing classified information with an unauthorized civilian. Senator Roberts demanded. Sarah's attorney stood again. My client never revealed classified information to her husband. The conversations in question were about their domestic life, using code words that had no operational significance. But another committee member, Senator Walsh, was already producing a stack of transcripts. Agent Chen, in a conversation dated November 15th, you told your husband, and I quote, "The winter project is moving faster than expected, and the contractor from Prague is causing problems. Can you explain what this domestic conversation was really about?" Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. The winter project referred to our plans to install new heating in our home. The Prague contractor was a heating specialist we had consulted. It sounded weak, even to Marcus. He was beginning to understand that Sarah had been walking a tightrope between protecting him and protecting her mission, and that tightrope had finally broken. Senator Walsh continued reading. 3 days later, Operation Nightfall was compromised in Prague. Viktor Petrov, the man you were supposedly trying to turn, ambushed Agent David Harrison and to local assets. All 3 died. Viktor wasn't. Petrov didn't ambush anyone, Sarah said, her voice rising for the first time. Viktor Petrov has been dead for 2 years. The committee members fell silent. Senator Roberts leaned forward intently. Explain that statement, Agent Chen. Sarah took a deep breath, and Marcus realized she was about to reveal something that could either save her or destroy them. Both. The man who attacked my husband and me in December was using Viktor Petrov's identity, Sarah said. The real Viktor Petrov was killed in a car accident in Moscow in 2022. I have the death certificate. Her attorney produced a document from a manila folder and handed it to the committee. Senator Roberts examined it carefully. If Viktor Petrov was dead, he said slowly, then who was your contact in Prague? Someone who wanted me to believe I was turning a Russian intelligence officer, Sarah replied. Someone who fed me information designed to compromise Operation Nightfall from the beginning. Senator Walsh looked skeptical. You're suggesting you were manipulated by an unknown party using a dead man's identity. I'm suggesting that someone in this room knew Viktor Petrov was dead and chose not to tell me, Sarah said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The silence that followed was deafening. Committee members exchanged nervous glances, and Marcus could see that Sarah had just changed the entire dynamic of the hearing. Senator Roberts' voice was carefully controlled. That's a serious accusation. Agent Chen, it's a provable accusation, Sarah replied. She nodded to her attorney, who produced another document. This is a classified CI intelligence assessment dated March 2022, confirming Viktor Petrov's death and recommending that all operations involving him be terminated immediately. She paused, letting the implications sink in. This assessment was distributed to 12 people. 6 of them are dead. 5 others had no access to Operation Nightfall. Senator Roberts was studying the document intently, and the 12th person. Sarah looked directly at Senator Walsh, who had suddenly gone very pale. Senator Walsh, Sarah said calmly, would you like to explain to this committee why you authorized me to make contact with a dead Russian spy? The explosion of activity that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever witnessed. security. Personnel moved towards Senator Walsh, who was shouting denials and demanding his lawyer. Other committee members were shouting questions, and the court reporter was frantically trying to record everything. But through it all, Marcus watched his wife sitting calmly at the witness table, and finally understood what he had married, Sarah, wasn't just a CIA operative. She was a master strategist who had spent 6 months setting up this moment. "How long have you known?" Senator Roberts asked when order was finally restored and Senator Walsh had been escorted from the room. "I suspected something was wrong in Prague," Sarah replied, "but I didn't have proof until Victor's people attacked my home. They made one critical mistake, which was," Sarah smiled grimly, "they assumed my husband was just an innocent bystander. They didn't realize he's a software engineer who specializes in data analysis and has a photographic memory." Every eye in the room turned to Marcus, who suddenly understood why Sarah had insisted he be present for this hearing. Senator Roberts looked at him expectantly. "Mr. Chen, do you have something to add to this testimony?" Marcus stood up on shaking legs, clutching a folder he had been holding throughout the hearing. "The man who broke into our house had detailed knowledge of our daily routines," Marcus said. "He knew Sarah's travel schedule, my work habits, even which car we drove. But there was only one person outside the CIA who had access to that level of personal information about us." He opened his folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Our homeowner's insurance application, filed 8 months ago. The agent who processed it had access to all our personal details, financial information, and daily schedules." Marcus looked directly at the remaining committee members. That insurance agent was David Walsh, Senator Walsh's son. The committee hearing was suspended immediately following Marcus's revelation. Within hours, FBI agents had arrested David Walsh at his insurance office in Suburban, Virginia, where they discovered encrypted communications equipment and over $2 million in cryptocurrency payments from shell companies traced to Russian intelligence services. But the real shock came 3 days later, when Sarah received a phone call that changed everything. Marcus was in their secure safe house in Quantico, trying to process the reality that his wife had spent 6 months orchestrating one of the most complex counterintelligence operations in CIA history. When Sarah's encrypted phone rang, Agent Chen, the voice on the other end, was weak but unmistakable. Sarah went completely white. Jim Morrison." Marcus watched his wife sink into a chair as she realized she was hearing the voice of her supposedly dead handler. "I'm sorry, Sarah." Morrison's voice was barely a whisper. "I couldn't risk contact until we were sure the network was blown. We held a memorial service for you," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "The agency told us you were killed in Prague." "The agency believed I was killed in Prague," Morrison corrected. "That was the point. We needed Senator Walsh to think his operation had succeeded completely." Marcus felt reality shifting again. How many people knew he was alive? Sarah looked at him, then spoke into the phone. "Jim, my husband is here. He's part of this now, whether we like it or not." Morrison's laugh was weak, but genuine. "Marcus Chen, the man who brought down a senatorial espionage ring with an insurance application. I've been looking forward to meeting you. You've been watching us, Marcus realized. We've been protecting you, Morrison corrected. Senator Welch wasn't the only person compromised. His network included federal judges, FBI supervisors, and at least 3 other members of Congress. Sarah was shaking her head. The scope of this is bigger than anyone imagined, Morrison confirmed. Viktor Petrov may have been dead, but his intelligence network wasn't. They've been recruiting American officials for over 5 years. Marcus sat down heavily as the implications hit him. The HOA harassment, the fake violations. All of that was designed to flush Sarah into the open. Exactly, Morrison said. They knew a deep cover operative would eventually have to surface to protect her civilian life. They just didn't expect her to turn the trap around on them. Sarah wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders, becoming the professional operative again. What's the current status? Senator Walsh is cooperating, Morrison reported. We've identified 17 compromised officials and over 40 foreign assets operating in the United States. The damage assessment will take months. And our status? Sarah asked. There was a long pause. That's complicated. Marcus felt his heart sink again, but Morrison continued. The good news is that all charges against Agent Chen have been dropped. The Intelligence Committee has voted to commend her for exceptional service under extreme circumstances. Sarah looked cautiously optimistic. And the bad news, your cover identity is completely blown. Sarah Chen, suburban housewife and communications consultant, is dead. The question is whether you want Sarah Chen, CIA operative, to continue existing. Marcus understood what Morrison was asking. Sarah could disappear back into the intelligence world, taking on a new identity and leaving their marriage behind. Or she could leave the agency and try to build a normal life with him. Sarah looked at Marcus with an expression he couldn't read. What would happen if I chose to stay with my husband? You'd be relocated, given new identities, and provided with enough financial support to start over anywhere in the world, Morrison said. But you'd never be able to work in intelligence again. And there would always be some risk that your past would catch up with you. Marcus realized this was the moment that would define the rest of their lives. Sarah had sacrificed her career, her safety, and nearly her life to protect him. Now, he had to decide if he was willing to sacrifice his normal, predictable existence to stay with her. Sarah, Marcus said quietly, I need to ask you something. She nodded, her green eyes focused entirely on him. That night you said you never wanted me to see that part of your world. Marcus continued. But the truth is, I don't want to see any world that doesn't include you. Sarah's professional composure finally cracked completely. She buried her face in her hands and began sobbing. Not the controlled tears of an operative, but the raw emotion of a woman who had been carrying impossible burdens for too long. Marcus crossed to her chair and pulled her into his arms. I don't care if you're CIA, HOA, or FBI, he whispered. I care that you're my wife. Morrison's voice came through the phone. Gentle but insistent. I need an answer, Sarah. Sarah looked up at Marcus through her tears. Are you sure, really sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back to normal. Marcus thought about their quiet suburban home, with its shattered front door and bullet holes in the walls. He thought about congressional hearings and safe houses and the constant possibility that their past would catch up with them. Then he thought about the woman who had risked everything to protect him, who had turned a trap into a victory, who made pancakes on Sunday mornings and could take down armed intruders without breaking a sweat. Normal was always overrated, Marcus said. Sarah smiled through her tears and picked up the phone. Jim, we'll take the relocation package. Excellent, Morrison said. There's just one more thing you should know. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. After everything they had been through, what else could there be? Senator Walsh's network included someone very close to you, Morrison continued. Someone who helped coordinate the surveillance of your daily routines and provided intelligence about your vulnerability. Type points. Who? Sarah asked, though Marcus could see she had already guessed. Mrs. Rodriguez, the HOA Architectural Review Committee chairwoman. She didn't move to Arizona. She was extracted to Moscow after providing the Russians with detailed intelligence about your cover identity. Sarah closed her eyes. She approved our solar panel installation 6 months ago. She was in our home, had access to our schedules, knew our vulnerabilities. And she's been feeding information to Viktor Petrov's network ever since, Morrison confirmed. The good news is that she's been arrested by Russian authorities for embezzling network funds. Apparently, she got greedy. Marcus started laughing, a sound that was equal parts relief and hysteria. So our HOA really was crap after all. Sarah began laughing too. And soon they were both doubled over with the kind of laughter that comes after surviving something that should have killed you. Morrison's voice was warm with affection. I'll let you to process all of this. New identities will be ready in 48 hours. And Sarah, yes, outstanding work. Prague was avenged. After Morrison hung up, Sarah and Marcus sat in their safe house, holding each other and trying to imagine what their new life would look like. I have one condition, Marcus said finally. What's that? Our next house doesn't have an HOA. Sarah kissed him softly. Deal. But I'm keeping the panic button outside. The sun was setting over Quantico, and somewhere in the distance, they could hear the sounds of a normal world continuing its normal existence. Tomorrow, they would begin building a new life together, one that honored both the quiet dreams Marcus had always wanted and the dangerous realities Sarah could never completely escape. But tonight, they were just two people who had found each other in the middle of an impossible situation and decided that love was worth fighting for, even when fighting for it meant giving up everything else they had ever known. The only question remaining was whether their new neighbors would be as interesting as their old ones. Something told Marcus they probably would be.